Hello everyone, it's Greg from Edinburgh Renaissance Fencing Academy here. It's been a while since I've produced a video. That's simply because I've been busy with my day job. However, I'm back in action today, and this video is all about the use of the spadone, which is to say the large Italian two-handed sword, or greatsword if you prefer, of the Renaissance era. So in particular today, I want to focus on one of the fundamental skills of handling this large sword, which is to say how to hold or grip the sword correctly. This skill is really essential to master. There's no point in going out and trying to learn lots of complex cutting patterns and plays and tactical options unless you know how to handle the sword correctly. So let's get started. Okay, so I've moved a little closer to the camera so you can see clearly what my hands are doing on the handle of the sword. I'm aware that my head is a little out of shot just now. That's not important. We should be focused on what's going on down here. So the lead hand takes a simple hammer grip up at the top of the handle, just next to the crossguard, like so. This is no different from many other styles of swordsmanship within the European wider tradition. What's interesting is what goes on with the rear hand. Now, before we talk in more detail about the spadone, let's go back in time to the earlier medieval traditions of two-handed swords. So what modern practitioners would generally describe as the longsword. Now, in Italian longsword, the rear hand generally goes right down at the pommel or even a little bit over the pommel. So it can move around a little bit depending on what's going on with the sword and what guard stance you are in and what you're trying to achieve tactically in the fight. This is described in some detail in, for example, Filippo Vadi's treatise of the 1480s, where he specifically advises having a well-rounded pommel to allow your hand to comfortably go over the top of it, like so. Now, the situation with the larger spadone of the later Renaissance period is actually quite different. If you look carefully at the diagrams in the various treatises of the era, the rear hand actually goes a little bit further up the handle like so, so that the pommel is projecting below the base of the hand like this. Now, the grip of the sword with the two hands is primarily applied with the forefinger and thumb and a little bit with the next finger, and then progressively lighter with the lower fingers. So to exaggerate slightly, you can see a grip like this with the lower fingers more lightly clasping the handle. Now, this grip can be tightened or loosened off depending on what you're doing with the sword at the time. Now, the design of the handles usually in a well-made sword includes some kind of bulge or shoulder on the grip to allow this sort of clasping of the sword with the rear hand. So not here, but actually up here where the grip starts to widen. So this should be our grip with the spadone. And I'm going to include a couple of images here from treatises. Please focus on the hands and you will see what I mean. Okay, so now that I've moved back into shot, let's talk about how this method of holding the sword affects the manipulation of the weapon during fencing. So, the first thing to say is that both hands need to be involved in powering and controlling such a large, heavy weapon. This may sound obvious, but there's an instinct in all of us to try to dominate any double-handed action with our lead hand, with our naturally stronger hand. For example, If we take the more longsword type of grip, like so, with the hand at the pommel, what tends to happen is the lead hand, so the right hand in my case, is the one that's throwing the weapon forwards, and the rear hand is the one that's doing all the fine actions like disengagement and little beats and winds and things like that. The Spadone is not a subtle weapon, and it is, frankly, quite heavy. We can't really afford to do that. We will tire out our lead arm really quickly if we allow our dominant hand to take control of proceedings too much. We need both hands acting together. So in my opinion, that is why you want the rear hand a little bit further up the grip, where the grip is wider and where you can clasp it more tightly. And in this case, you can use both hands to power and control the sword in cuts, in parries, in little beats, and in thrusts as well. While you are training, and particularly in the early stages of learning this weapon, you will find that you probably need to force yourself to consciously clasp the handle of the sword tighter with your weaker hand, just to try to take some of the load off of the lead arm. You do not want your lead arm to get tired. You will never be able to control the weapon properly that way. Now, this is most obvious when we try to cut with such a large bladed weapon, but it is interestingly quite important in thrusts as well. In all of his two-handed weapons, so the polearms and the spadone, De Grassi says that the range or the reach of a thrust is limited by the rear hand, not by the lead hand. So in other words, if I'm thrusting in this direction, I'm not thrusting out to here to the extent of my lead hand. I'm thrusting out to here to the extent of my rear hand. And it is from this rear hand powered action that we get to De Grassi's extended thrust, where we thrust with both hands on the grip and then let the lead hand go to extend the thrust in that single-handed action, something that's very characteristic of De Grassi's approach to the Spadone. So this tells us very clearly that the rear hand must have quite a firm grip of the handle of the weapon. So that's it really. It seems like a small point, but this can make a huge difference in your ability to successfully fence with this large weapon. With so much mass in it, it's easy to lose control and not be able to perform your techniques correctly. So have a look at how you grip the sword and think about what I've said today. The rear hand, the weaker hand, must get involved in the action, and it can only do so if you grip the handle of the sword correctly. Right, that's it for today. Take care, everyone. I'll see you again soon. Bye.